Hey guys, you're still here. Congratulations. The next thing that I'm going to show you is what I personally found the hardest thing to grasp when I was learning programming a while ago, and that is things that get returned from methods. Okay, so I'm going to start with an example, and I've chosen the most boring example I can think of, a calculator. Okay, so we have a class calculator, and in here I'm going to create some methods. Alright, so we're talking about returning. This first one is going to return the sum of two numbers. And then I'm also going to make another one, returns whether a number is odd or even. You guys are like, oh, she should take some typing lessons. Okay, so let's think again about the structure of a method. So what we were looking at before was the first thing we have is the return type. I'm going to be talking about that. That's the purpose of this lecture. But it goes there. Then you have the name of the method, and then you have the parentheses, and you have the curly braces, and in the parentheses you have a parameter or parameters, and that's the structure of it. Okay, so this first method we're going to make will be called add. So I'm going to look at the structure that I need, and I'm going to type this out this time. We've been using the automated tools, but you really need to get good at this stuff. Okay, first, the return type. The return type is the first thing you'll see at the top of at the start of a method declaration, unless it's static or private. We'll talk about those in a minute. Okay, so, and it's going to return the sum of two numbers. So we have to figure out what type of variable we'll be using for that. The sum of two numbers is going to be an int. Okay, so we have return type figured out. Next, name. Name of method, add. Next, parameters. What are we going to pass into the method? We're going to pass in two numbers. Okay, and there we have the structure of our method. All right, now Eclipse is complaining. What's it groaning about now? This method must return a result of type int. Okay, so what it means is I want this thing to have a return statement. For now, I'm just going to say 0 to see if I can get it to stop complaining. All right, so now it's happy. And actually, this is a nice hint. It's got grayness there and grayness there. So I'm returning a 0. That's an int. And this is telling me that this method will return an int. If I made this into a string, it's all no. Has to return an int. It's actually saying can't convert, but yeah. All right. So we're going to return something, but what we're actually going to return is not 0. It's going to be the sum of these numbers, which is x plus y. Good thing we have a whole method for this. Okay, I'm going to test that now. I'll keep that little thing that I'll be using for down here. And I'm going to try and run it. Main. Okay, and it's time to talk a little bit about this thing, static. Okay, I would think I should be able to call my method, go add like that, and then put in two numbers. It's not happy, and the reason is because this method is not static and this method is static. I'm going to talk more about static, but for now all you need to know is that you can't call a non-static method from within the static context, and the main method is within the static context. So what I would have to do here is I'd have to make a calculator instance. Calculator. Like that. And then I can access the non-static methods of the calculator class like that. Now don't worry, the whole next lesson is going to be talking about how to create objects, how to use their methods and all that sort of stuff. So for now, I just want you to focus on being able to understand this and know that static is something that the main always is, but rarely are the methods within your class static. Actually, I'm going to show you another little thing. So if this method was static and I have the calculator class, well, now I can call this directly like that. Good thing I have this calculator method, and it's gone sideways, italic. So that means it's a static method. If you were outside of this class, calculator, then you would do calculator with a dot like that, and that might be familiar for some things like, look at that. All right, so we're going to talk in a second about the J option pane. I might actually do it right now. Okay, so I'm going to do my show input dialog, and maybe I'll say, let's say we want to use this calculator. So first number, that's supposed to be a question mark. Okay, and then we're going to catch the result. And I'm going to do this 2 times because I need 2 numbers. Ooh-wee. And then I'm going to try to pass them to this method. Okay, so what's wrong with this? Add. No le gusta. What it's saying is that because number 1 and number 2 are strings right now, they can't be passed into the add method because it's expecting ints. So we have another little thing to do. And that is to convert it. Ooh, do you guys remember this? I didn't want that. I wanted integer.parse int, control space, put the string in. Number 1. Thank you. I'm gonna just do a quick cut and paste job over here and change those to 2s. And then we should be able to pass these ints in to the add method. Okay, now it's happy. I feel kind of weird because I don't really want this to be static, so I'm going to unstaticify it, and then I've got to do what I was doing earlier, instantiate my calculator and then use the add method within it. Alright, I should test this, but I don't have any way to see anything. There's no printouts and there's no way for me to check my result. So what I'm actually doing, which is possibly the most important thing of this whole lecture, is I'm going to catch the return of this add method in a variable. And then I'm going to print it out. Wow, amazing. I really think it shouldn't be getting me to look at 2 different places. Ooh. No. And result. Alright, there we go. It's working alright. And so let's just take a look at this. Alright, so we've been using this a lot, so I think it's kind of a familiar thing that we could use to do a sort of example. And I'm gonna try and think about what this show input dialog method looks like. Alright, so the first thing is, because it's got J option dot in front of it, it's going to be a static method, because we don't have to say new J option pane to use it. We can just do J option pane dot. That means it's static. That's the first clue. The next thing we know is that it has a return type. Its return type is a string. How do I know that? Because I can call this method and then I can catch the result in a string right there. So the return type string. Next, what's its name? All right, its name is pretty obvious. It's called show input dialog. What do you think it has as parameter or parameters? Okay, let's look in the parentheses here, and you can see that this is a string. So we know that this method will be taking a string. Okay, so it's red because I haven't returned anything. I'm just returning an empty string to get it to stop being red at me. And that's just an example of what it might look like behind, well, what it probably, I mean, this is correct. The show input dialog method looks like this. I've just recreated it, but it's actually in the J option pane class. All right, what I did there is I pressed the command key and then I clicked on J option pane, and now it's showing me the actual Java class. Look at that, it was written by James Gosling. And then you can see all the stuff in there. So let's see where we write. Let's go into the show input dialog. Look at that, static string, and it's taking an object. We could do that too. We could have had an object in there. When we're talking about inheritance later, I think that's maybe lesson 8. Yes, you are going to have to listen to me for that long. And then you'll understand how that can be object. Okay, that was just a little segue to show you what this method might look like. This stuff is I found this to be difficult. Not as much understanding the return, but really when you start using multiple objects together and how they interrelate, that's the thing that it took me a while to figure out in 1996. Okay, let's move on to this second method, returns whether a number is odd or even. So I'm going to use this template. The return type returns whether a number is odd or even. Okay, for that I'm going to use a string. The name of my method is going to be parameters. Okay, does that make sense? So we've got the return type, string, we've got the name, odd or even, and then for the parameters, we have the number we're passing in. And that's going to return, we want it to return whether a number is odd or even. And we're going to return either odd or even as a string. So let's see if we can figure out how to actually test this. Before I do anything, I'm going to return an empty string, just so that it stops complaining like that. And to do the whole thing, I'm going to call it also. You know, I might just copy that. No, I'll make a new one. But it is going to look something like this. Whoop. Nope, that wasn't what I wanted. Okay, so we're going to ask for a thing, then we're going to convert a thing, and then we are going to pass it to the odd or not method. Yes, okay, so I'm just going to iterate what happened there. So now my Eclipse is telling me there's an error here, and that's because I cut and pasted the code that I was using for the add method, which returns an int. But the method that I'm using now is returning a string. So the thing that I need to change here to make this better is change it from int to string there. So odd or even is going to return a string. When I was using add, it returns an int, and that's the pattern. If you can get that down at the end of this lesson, you're off to the races. Print the result. I'm going to run this. So usually it's good to have a way to test your code, or some people might say essential. I don't have it doing anything yet except returning an empty string, so that's why it didn't show anything. Let's see, I just want to make sure that the whole round trip is working out. So just to quickly talk you through what's going on here, we're asking for the number, then we're converting it to an int, and then we're going in here, we're accessing the odd or even method, we're returning hello, and then hello ends up in this result variable. Okay, so I just feel like I should pause for a second so that you can figure that out. We've got the result coming in as number, and then the hello is passed back. It's a string here, so it's okay, and then it comes back into result, and then we are printing out result. That's why it said hello. But we wanted to actually tell whether this number is odd or even. So we were doing things like this before, using our friend modulo. So whether it's odd or even is really whether it is divisible by 2. So I can say if the number modulo 2 gives me 0, then I'm going to return even. So if it is in fact even, this method is going to return at this point, and it's not ever going to get down here to this other return statement. So that's why I don't necessarily have to put this into an else. I feel a little dirty leaving that there like that. I think it's clearer and like that. Anyway, so let's give it a whirl. Odd seems to be working ish. Let's see, I'll try an even number. Okay, so there's my method. Right, not a very interesting example. I'm going to go on and have a look at another thing. That's the calculator. The next thing we're going to look at is this Pig Latin translator. I didn't write this code. I know, because I would never have this many comments and stuff in here. So this is nice. This is a comment, but it would probably be better if you just turn this into code. So like we were extracting methods in the last lecture, you could just encode this description as a method name. If there aren't any words left, stop. Extract method. No words left. This is pretty safe because it's all automatic, so I'm not going to break it. And then, because it's encoded in the code, we actually would not need that comment. Your code, so the reason that I don't like these green things being around is what happens when you're on a project for a while is because these don't actually do anything, they get out of date really quickly. So you'll see a lot of comments in code that are old, that are incorrect. The thing that really speaks the truth is the code. So if you can keep your ideas within the code itself, that's much better. And you can use method names, nicely descriptive method names for that, or you can use nicely descriptive variables for that. Using these, it's usually, I'm not sure if this is too bad because this is an index, which is usually considered to be I. Everybody pretty much knows that. But usually descriptive methods and descriptive variables will make your code more legible. Look at this stuff. I would encapsulate this idea. What's that? That is vowel, is vowel. Okay, so now I just say if is vowel, and then all that junk's out there. Now look at this. This is returning a Boolean, so it's checking all these things. Each of these is going to return true or false. Is the character there A? Is the character there E? Is the character there I? And what this thing is that's the OR. So if the character was A, or if the character was E, or if the character was I, in any of those cases, it's going to return true because that means it was a vowel. If all of those are false, if none of them are vowel, then this will return false. Alright, so the whole purpose of being here is actually to use this class. So let's see if we can do that. Pig Latin is a kind of it's a fake language. You should Google it if you want to know what it is. The whole purpose though of this exercise is I just want to show you how you might use somebody else's code and how to deal with the methods inside and correctly handle the parameters and the return values. So this is kind of a lot of stuff. I'm going to just compress these methods so I can just make it a little cleaner for me to see what's going on. There's a lot of code here on one page. It's usually best to keep your code to a viewable length, viewable vertical length. But here I can clearly see just the method declarations. I'm trying to figure out which of these methods is going to help me translate my string. I'm going to get a string. I'm going to make it something clever. What is the velocity of an unladen swallow? Okay, that's the thing that I want to translate into Pig Latin. Now, these things are static. That means I'm able to call them, these methods are static. That's why I'm able to call them from the main method. So I can see I'm not going to break out of the static context in this case. And if I wanted to, outside of this class, I could do pig Latin translator dot, and then I could do, these are the methods that I have here because they're static. What I'm trying to find out is how I will translate this, which one of these methods I need to use. There's also, there's a little clue that I'm seeing. What this means is that this method is not able to be used outside of this class. If it's private, that means it's only related to this class, only this class can use it. If it's public, that means anyone outside of this class can use it. And the reason that's a clue is because if this code was to be used by someone outside, it's telling you that this is pretty much the main method. Not the main method as in this main method, but it's the key method that you would use to do the work of the translating. And it's called translate, so. Okay, so it's translate. This is the method that we want to use. So we got to take note of what parameters to pass in and what it returns. It's going to be pretty obvious because we're going to pass in a string. The string is going to be my something clever, and it's going to return a string. So let's catch that string. Like so. All right, let's test this out. Okay, so down here, this is showing the Pig Latin version of what I said. At way is a, e they, velocity ve, of a, okay, etc. There's my Pig Latin version, so that means that this has been done correctly. Before I go, I'm just going to show you a little bit more about this private and public business. So let's say we're in a class outside of here. I'm going to call it Babelfish. A Babelfish in the book A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a little tool that you can use to translate between things. So say I'm just imagining that I have this translator that lives outside in the world, and it can do a lot of different translations. Like it can do a Pig Latin translation, and you could use it to do translations. Okay, This is cool. So I'm not sure if you remember, but when I did that from within the Pig Latin Translator class, do you see the way I have a whole bunch more methods available than when I do it here? Okay, the reason for that is some of these methods are private. The private methods are not usable outside of the Pig Latin Translator class. If I try to do one of these, his letter, let's do that. What do I take? What do I put in there? Character, and it returns a boolean. Put a character in there. Ooh-wee, redness. Okay, doesn't like that. It's asking me if I want to change the visibility of the letter. That's what we're talking about right now. We could have public visibility, we could have private visibility, and this is not usable. If I did do the quick fix, you'll see. I'm not going to do the quick fix, I'm going to do it manually. So I'm going to go over here into the Pig Latin Translator, and then I'm going to make this public, and now Babelfish is not read anymore. But I ought not do that because whoever wrote this had a good point. They were trying to keep these methods do kind of background work, and if you were going to use it, it's much easier to see which one of the methods is the one that you should use, and that's the translate method. Oopsie. Okay, translate, and then I put my string in there. All right, here I am outside of the Pig Latin Translator class. I'm using the translate method, which is public, and I'm executing it from within the static context, and that's because the translate method is also static. Okay, the next exercise for you guys is spelling bee. Yes, spelling bee. Okay, so this you have to make a little spelling thing. From my computer, because I'm on a Mac, I have the words stored in the dictionary here. If you don't have that, you'll have to make a file with some words in it, and then you'll have to refer to the file here, and the file should exist in your source directory. All right, good luck with spelling bee. Then the quiz for this module is going to be important because it checks a lot of your understanding about method return types, parameters, how to write methods, all of that stuff is very important. Keep doing the exercises until you understand this stuff really thoroughly. I have the optional exercises, and then you can have a look at my examples, maybe make your own skyline, whatever you need to do until you feel really confident, because once you have the foundation of this, then everything else will be easier. All right, good luck. See you guys in the next lesson.